Dune is Game of Thrones in space. This is how I got 9 friends to watch Denis Villeneuve's new movie with me. The problem with the statement is that I made it referring to the 1965 novel by Frank Herbert, which tells the story of Paul Atreides, the son of a duke who in the year 10,000 something is ordered to take control of a planet where the most valuable substance in the galaxy, the so-called spice, aka space cocaine, is produced. For the movie, I don't find this statement to be particularly accurate. While all 9 friends and I, spoilers, did enjoy the movie, it still raises the eternal question that plagues any non-original IP. Is Dune a good adaptation of the source material or just a cash grab blockbuster? To answer this question, it is important to define what makes an adaptation a good one. Ask anybody on the internet and they will tell you, it needs to stay faithful to the original. Then they will usually add, it shouldn't change things. So does Dune change a lot of things? Yes, it does. It cuts out parts of the story that take up around 150 pages of the first half of the novel. Every interaction between Havad and Jessica is dropped, and thus is the entire subplot of him suspecting her to be a spy. The entire story, lore, and subplot of Dr. Yue is not mentioned at all. Also, the subplot of hunting and rooting out the Harkonnen spies on Arrakis, as well as most of the scenes from House Harkonnen's perspective, are dropped. And with them the eerie, Game of Thrones-esque cloak and dagger espionage feel that I meant when describing it as Game of Thrones in space. So is Dune the movie just a Frankenstein-like abomination made from parts of Dune the novel? Just a great story turned action flick? No! Because while it does change up a lot of things, it does so deliberately, in order to adapt the story to the new medium. Filmento once said that a movie script needs to be hyper-focused and that, unlike books or TV shows, it can't afford to go on tangents, since its time is very limited. Denis Villeneuve apparently thought so too, because every change that I listed was a trade-off. Complexity of the plot was traded for comprehensibility and an somewhat adequate runtime. Even the motifs and themes of the original couldn't escape the downsizing. Humans' influence on their surrounding ecology is not explored at all. The perverted eugenic ideas of a certain order are just mentioned with a sentence. The discussion about predeterminism versus free will is nearly not explored at all. But this one might be because Paul's visions are not adopted very well. All those cuts are used to make room for Dune's central theme: power and religion. Well, even here, the power part is reduced. The viewer just gets a glimpse of the different approaches that House Atreides and Harkonnen take towards governing and leading their people, and how that affects their people's decisions. Instead, we see how religion affects people's perception, and how some can use religion to exert control over others. The movie changes even how characters behave. While novel Chani seems like a girl that just blindly believes what she is told, movie Chani is a bit more skeptical, which makes her a more interesting character and not just a love interest / stand-in for the Fremen people. So to answer the question I posed earlier, Dune is a very good adoption of its source material because it doesn't just blindly retell every page of the book without regard to the new medium it uses, but also doesn't change things in a random fashion without the changes enhancing or even serving the story. Although, I still don't know why Dr. Kynes got gender bent. Maybe you guys can tell me in the comments? Now, let's talk about some of the things that the movie doesn't do very well. First of all, some concepts are not used. In the novel, Fremen only travel at night, because during the day, even with their water recycling still suits, they fear the heat. While a cool world-building tool, it would just be a shame to film this beautiful movie at night. Some concepts are just used without explaining or exploring them. I assure you that nobody that watches the movie without prior knowledge will understand why Havad turns his eyes back into his skull to calculate the cost for troop movement, or why it's such a big deal when troops are moved from one planet to another. Other concepts are explored, but poorly. Prime example being Paul's visions. There is literally no way of understanding that he is seeing potential outcomes of the future calculated in his mind with the limited information available to him, or that he struggles to prevent a future that is dominated by a holy war. But the biggest flaw of this movie is how it doesn't show how deep the Fremen's living conditions shape their culture. While I mentioned that shooting an entire movie at night to show just how hot Arrakis could get would just be a waste of so many beautiful shots, there is literally no excuse for not having the Fremen remove their still suit, the masterpiece of engineering that allows them to recycle water in a world where having a liter of water is considered an abundance of wealth, before entering a ritual duel to the death. This scene alone eliminates more world building than all the cuts to the story and motifs that I listed earlier. Lastly, without it being obvious in the promo material, Dune is in fact part 1 of 2. Yeah, they pulled an Infinity War on us. And while this is infuriating enough, it also means that the main motif is not completely explored, but just set up for the next half of the story, for part 2. Even though so much was sacrificed to make time for it. This movie shows us that religion plays a major role in human society, but can't get to the bottom of it. Can show the potential internal power or potential degeneration of a person who uses religion as the foundation of his persona. This interesting discussion will be subject of part 2. So, now I told you why Dune is a good adaptation of its source material, what it does bad, but not why it's a good movie. The first reason is that it manages to provide most of its exposition by showing it. There is no narrator to explain the pseudoscience behind the voice, a technique with that one can practically mind control a person. It is shown. The first time from the perspective of the controller, the second time from the perspective of the controlled, all supported by cinematography. Most concepts are made clear without an info dump, which is a feat for such a complex setting. And then there is the cast, the score, and the cinematography. Oh boy, every character is played nearly to perfection. Be it Oscar Isaac as Leto Atreides, Paul's father, Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica, Paul's mother and secret badass, Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho, Paul's swordmaster, or I don't know how to pronounce his name, as Vladimir Harkonnen. I mean, just look at every character and tell me that you didn't imagine them to look and act exactly like that. Their exceptional performance is even further elevated by Hans Zimmer's score. Finally, those two are framed by stunning landscapes and buildings, all filmed in IMAX, so you just lose yourself in this never-ending desert, or space, or cliff, or battlefield. Every set and every special effect is immaculate. I hope I did convince you guys to go to the cinema for this one because, oh boy, this is a one-in-a-decade movie. My audio producer and I will be doing an in-depth discussion, so if you want to know more about the things that the movie skips or certain scenes, join us wherever you get your podcasts. Alright.